Hello everyone, Tom Morley here from FOSS 365 and welcome to Spaceball, the tutorial. And we're going to use some free textures, and I got the textures I'm going to use from opengamearts.org. So you can go there and you can look up this 40 free metal textures, and it's all from Rubber Duck, but there's some really cool textures in here that we're going to use to create our game assets. So go ahead and go to this website and download these textures, or if you want to use different textures, grab whatever you want. Alright, so we're done with that. So I downloaded them already and unzipped them and put them in a folder, and what we want to do is we want to apply one of the textures to our floor right here. We can go over to the base color, and if we click on base color, we click on image texture, we can open the texture that we're going to use, which my textures are in my project source folder, image textures, and there's my 40 sample textures. Now I can't see what they are in Blender, but if you click this button, then you get a kind of small icon view of all the different textures that are out there. So I'm going to use this one right here, the M30 JPEG. So I'm going to double click on that, and you'll see that it did load it here. And I'm in solid mode, so let's go to material mode, and when I clicked on that, you see that that default material is kind of blue in color, but my image did not apply to my objects. And why is that? That's because I did not UV unwrap this object. So I'm going to cheat in this tutorial, and I'm not going to get into detailed UV unwrapping. I'm going to show you how to cheat. We're in edit mode on the object. Press A to deselect everything, A to make sure that everything is selected. Okay. Now that everything is selected, press the U key to unwrap, and we want to cube projection unwrap this object. So now when I did that, check that out. I'm going to press the tab key to get out of edit mode, and it applied that surface material for me. So that's pretty cool. But what I want is I want this material to be facing the other direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the material section here, make sure that my M30 JPEG is selected, which it is, and I'm going to, in the Z direction, rotate that 90 degrees, because now I want it lined up in that direction. Okay. Now the sides don't look quite right. We'll fix that in a second. So let's select this object, which now is comprised of both the left and right objects, because we joined those, remember? Let's do the same thing. We need to unwrap those. So let's go into edit mode. Let's press A to deselect all of the faces, then A to select everything, U to unwrap, and cube projection, unwrap them. And look at that. I mean, it's quick and dirty. It's not perfect, but it looks pretty cool already, right? So now we're unwrapped. Now at this point, I did go in and modify a few things as it applies to the textures. The textures that were supplied, the 40 free metal textures, they are pretty cool. But I needed something that would wrap around the sides of these and look a little bit better. So what I did was I went into GIMP and I loaded up this texture, our M30 texture. I took this section here and I copied and pasted it so that I generated this picture, so that I can have something for the sides of the ramps that matches closely to the original texture. So then I saved this out to the same folder as my 40 free metal texture folder. I'll go ahead and minimize this. So now what I can do is I can fix the edges. So let's select this object first. Let's go into edit mode, and I only want to select, make sure my face select is on, I only want to select that face and the one on the other side. So I'm going to shift click that one right there too. Alright, so now I'm going to go over to my surfaces, or my material, and I need to create a additional material for my object, so I press the plus button, and for now I'm just going to grab the original material, right? I'm going to hit the plus to duplicate it, add a new material based on this material, and you can see it changes it to material 01. So let's rename these. I'm going to rename this to ramp top, and this material here to ramp side. Okay, I still have the side selected, right? And I have ramp side selected here. So let's grab my modified image. It's right here. It's my M16 mod. So I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to click the assign button with the sides highlighted and the ramp side selected. I'm going to click assign, and you'll see the sides of the ramp change, but it looks like my alignment is not correct. Yeah, I think I want it going up and down, so let's grab my mod, change that back to 0, and there you go. Now it's moving up and down. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Kind of gives me a more realistic looking object than the sides looking like this. So now I need to do the same thing for the sides of the rest of the objects. So I'm going to go into object mode, grab that, go into edit mode, press A to deselect everything, and I think I want to move up to about, you see where it is on here, about up to there. So I'm going to select those, and I'm going to come over to my material. I'm going to create another one and just hit plus so that I've got more than one material on this object, and I don't have to create anything anymore. I can just select my ramp side, and when it's selected I click assign, and there you go. There's my side. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the rest of them. So select, hold down the shift key, select everything. I guess I can just continue to do that. Select all the sides here, and so I grab that whole side there, and now I'm going to click on ramp side, click assign, and there I'm going to hit the tab key to go into object mode, and you'll see there we go. It's looking more realistic already. That's kind of what I'm looking for. So basically go around, select all your sides, and assign them the side material. And I'm not going to do that. I'm going to speed up and come back once that's all done. So okay, so if you've done it correctly, you should have grading on the top of all of your ramps and floor, and your side should have some stripes all the way around it. And if you did that, then we're good to go. Continue on here. So I think we need to create another box for basically separating certain areas of our game once we get things rolling here. So let's recenter the cursor, because the box will be created wherever that cursor is. So if I clicked over here, it'll be over here, but we want it to be right in the center. So there's a key combination to center everything. It's Shift C to center cursor and view all. So that will center our cursor. And then if you hit the Alt key and then home, that's basically going to center it, our view. So now when we rotate, we're going to rotate around that cursor. And now if we click the Shift A and we add a mesh and we add a new cube, it's going to be exactly where we want it, so that our alignment will not be off. Okay, and we're going to bevel this cube It doesn't have to be exactly like the ramps, because we're not going to use this to roll the ball on. It's just going to be to divide things. So let's hit the tab key and let's put the texture on there, because I've got a trick here that might make things look a little bit better. So make sure that we have everything highlighted, which we do, and let's press U to unwrap it. Let's unwrap it with cube projection. Let's assign this a new surface, a new material. So let's create a new material. This material, we'll call it box, just so we know what it is. Again, we're going to use the principled shader. So grab the principled shader, and we're going to grab a texture, image texture, and we'll click open. We'll go to the images that we downloaded. Make it so we can see them. And I like all of these different box styles. I mean, you can choose whatever you want, but I either like the M9 or the M12, which they pretty much look the same. Maybe a little more detail on this one, so we'll grab the one with more detail. Double click, and you see it puts it on our cube perfectly. I mean, we don't have to spend a lot of time unwrapping it. We just use that cube map projection and get the result that we want. Now I want to bevel it a little bit, and what I'd like to do is maybe have that bevel go right to the edge here. So we'll hit the Shift B and go down, and bring it down to right at the edge there. Now we'll hit the middle mouse button, and we'll give it a little bit more of a bevel. So let's hit the tab key and move out of that, and you'll see that it creates an awesome looking box for us. So let's move this out of the way. Let's press G, and we're going to move that G and X. Just move it out of the way for now. So let's create one more asset. Let's create a 55-gallon drum. Let's do Shift A and create a new cylinder. Let's make sure it's at 18 vertices and has a radius of pretty much 0.40 and a depth of 0.9, somewhere in that range. Basically something that just looks right for the 3D scene. If you wanted to put a 55-gallon drum full of acid in this scene. So you've created it. Let's press Tab to go into edit mode. Let's click A, deselect everything, loop cut and slide, click on that, move over here, you see it creates a loop cut. Use the middle mouse button, scroll up so that there's two, left click, and now if you move up and down you could select where you want to put it, but if you right click it'll put it right in the middle. And these loop cuts are still selected. So what you can do now is you can scale them, and if you scale them out, you get kind of like you can make a barrel full of wine or whatever if you had that type of scene, but that's not what I'm going for. So I'm going to move them back in, then I'm going to press the Z key to constrain it to the Z axis, and now when I scroll up and down it's basically going to make the loop cuts move further away from the center. So that's what I want. I want basically two rings, a ring up at the top and a ring down at the bottom, because it's going to be a metal 55-gallon drum full of acid, right? So I want a lip here and a lip over there. So I'm going to go down here, select faces, press Shift Alt, select that rim, and same thing, I'm going to hold down the Shift and Alt, select that ring. I'm going to press the E key to extrude. Now I've already extruded. I'm going to press the right mouse button, and that locks in the extrude. Now I'm going to press the S key for scaling, and I'm going to scale that out. And now if you see that it's kind of, when I scale, it's going to scale out from the center. I don't want that, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the Shift key and then hit the Z key, and it locks it in that axis and only lets it scale in the X and Y direction. And you see, because I've got grid lock on, and it's basically not letting me fine tune it the way I want. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key, and I'm going to move in, and I just want an ever so slightly small area lip, and that'll do. So I left click and lock it in there. So now if I take a look at it, that's exactly what I'm looking for, except for I want some acid in the top, right? So I'm going to tab back into edit mode. I'm in face select mode. I'm going to select this top here. I'm going to press the I key to insert an area. I'm going to insert it, and then I'm going to left click and lock it in there. Now I want the water to be down a little bit, so I'm going to press the E key to extrude, and you see it drop down in there. I'm going to press the Z key to constrain it to Z and hold the Shift key so I can fine tune the level that it drops down. I think I'm going to not have it that full. I'm going to left click and lock it in there and take a look. See what that looks like. That's awful full, right? So I think I'm going to press G and Z again, hold down the Shift key, and maybe go down one more. I think that's good. I like that. So now I have to UV unwrap this. Again, this is not going to be a tutorial on UV unwrapping specifically, so we're going to cheat again and just cube unwrap it. But we don't want to assign one material to the whole thing, right? Because we've got some acid in here. So what we need to do is we want to create a new material. We're going to call this acid. Again, it's going to be the principled shader. That's pretty much all I'm going to work with from now on. And you see that I'm affecting the whole object, and really I only want the inside to be the acid. So we need more than one texture. Create a new one. Let's just grab the acid, press plus to copy it. Make a copy of it. We're going to rename that to the can itself, and the can will probably be red. So what we need to do is we need to select some of these faces and assign them the materials we want. So let's, in edit mode, click A, make sure that everything's selected, press A again to deselect everything. Right click and select only the green acid in there. Make sure that acid is selected and click assign. Now go down here to select and click on inverse. We could have just used the hotkey, I guess, but I'm going to invert the selection so it's everything else. So now we're going to click the can and we're going to click assign, and look at that. There we go. Now if I hit tab, you'll see that I've just basically created the different materials for our 55-gallon drum. So hit escape again, and let's assign smoothness to all of the can part. So let's go down to shading and UVs, click faces smooth, and see what that looks like. Oh yeah, that looks pretty good. It's very reflective though, so I would almost say that for some reason looks like I've got it entirely metallic, which is kind of weird. Let's add some roughness to it. There we go. That's fine. And now let's click on the acid. I don't think I'm going to put a material on the acid. What I'll do is the base color will be green, and the roughness, we'll click on the roughness and we'll add a wave texture to it. And if I click on preview, you can see it right there. So you're not going to see the wave texture for some reason in the material view, but if we went to rendered view, you might see it. Not really. Okay, doesn't really matter. And we want to go back into edit mode, and we still only have the red can part. We want to unwrap those, so we'll press U and we'll cube projection unwrap that. Let's add a image texture. Now what I've done is, again, I went in and I took one of the default textures, which was one of the blue textures, and I just brought it into GIMP, and I went into colors and hue and saturation, and I just changed the hue of the background. Now you can change it to whatever color you want and then resave it so that it can be the outside of your can, but I wanted mine to be red, so I did that, changed it to red. So now I'm going to open up my red texture. Oh, not pictures, projects, sorry. Source, images, CC0, there we go. And where's my red texture? Right there. Double click. So now I have my nice red texture all around it. So we only have one other asset that I want to create for this tutorial, and that's a fence, so that we can put it on the outside of our space dock so that the ball doesn't roll off the floor. So in order to create that, we are going to left click, put our cursor somewhere near the edge. I would say that's pretty good. We are going to do Shift, make sure we're in object mode, which we are, Shift A, and create a new circle. Yep. And we're going to scale it. Actually, let's change the vertices down to 8. Let's see, 9. Let's make it 10. 10 seems to be a nice number for us to create what we want. Change the radius down to about the size of what a fence would be. I would say that looks pretty good. And now I want to go into edit mode. I'm going to press F to create a face, then E to extrude, Z to extrude up. Hold the Shift key, and I'm going to extrude up. Not quite to the first floor, but that looks pretty good. This whole object looks a little bit too big to me right now, so we're going to tab into object mode, and we're going to scale it on the Shift C, so that will only scale it in the X and Y direction. And let's make it a little bit smaller. Yeah, that's fine. So let's go back into edit mode. The top should be the only thing selected, which it is. Now, another tip here, let's go into object mode. If you want to move around the scene, let's say I wanted to rotate around this can over here. If you're in object mode, you can press Alt F and it centers around that object. So now I can rotate around that object. Wherever your mouse is pointing, if you press Alt F, then that's where your center of rotation is going to be. So that comes in handy if you want to do something like this. I want to rotate basically around the top of that. Now I'm going to go back into edit mode. So at this point you want to rotate it in the y-axis -45. So rotate -45 in the y-axis. So Y -45, then left click, lock it in. So at that point you can extrude in the X direction and hold your Shift key down, and we want to bring it over to the edge there. I'm going to left click, and we're on the inside of this little blue area here, so we want to be here, holding the Shift key down and the middle mouse button to kind of move around to where I can see things here. It doesn't have to be exact, but now I'm going to press G and X to move it. Hold the Shift key down Bring it back pretty close. Yeah. I'm going to rotate it in the Y direction 90 degrees. Press the left mouse button. Now extrude in the Z axis all the way down. There we go. Now it isn't perfect. Now we can do one of two things. We can move it over a little bit, and that's probably what I'm going to do is move it over a little bit. Going to go into object mode, G and X. Hold the shift key. Alright, I guess I'm going to make it a little wider. So I don't think that that's going to do the ticket. Once we start creating a bunch of these connected, that needs to be a little bit wider. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into wireframe mode. We're going to go into edit mode. We're going to A, deselect everything, B for box select. First we're going to click faces. We're going to box select the faces here. And then we're going to G, move that in the X direction to there. And then we're going to press A, deselect that. B to box select. Box select all this. GX, shift. And I think that's going to work. So we're going to cut this extended length off too. So let's deselect everything. Box select's just the bottom. There you go. We're going to G. We're going to move it in the Z direction with the shift key. Move it up. Let's rotate that end in the Y direction until it's flat. Just going to eyeball it. That's fine. Going to move it up again with the shift key. Oh, I don't have to do it with the shift key. That will work. I said move, it just kind of went where I wanted it, which is fine. Go into the material section, kind of check it out. It looks okay. Everything looks fine. Let's assign a new material here. We're going to call it fence. Back to our good old principal shader. And this is going to be totally metallic. This is going to, actually no, let's not make it metallic. Let's make it the same color as this kind of this metal on the thing out here. So let's click on the eyedropper and let's make it this color. It'll kind of blend in more and be kind of more uniform with the rest of the environment. That's good. Now we just need a piece of glass that goes here. That should be easy enough. Let's, in edit mode, click on faces and let's make sure that everything's deselected. Press the A key a couple of times. And I'm going to, right up in the corner here, use Shift and Alt, and it should band select that face, the top face, and a face over here. And if I press F to fill that, should fill it with a piece of glass. Well, fill it with a texture. It's not necessarily glass at this moment, but we can make it glass. Because right now, those are highlighted. So let's click plus. Let's make it glass. Up here and double click on it. Glass. Assign it. Let's truly make it glass, at least in here. And I think that's all of the assets that we need to create.